resource in another data center?
Yes.
Okay, why? How are you establishing that communication?
I mean, through the networking.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. So when we say a resource, let's say a resource like a virtual machine, right? Where is this virtual machine residing at the end? It resides within its subnet. Where is this subnet? It resides within its VNet, right? Your isolated environment, isn't that?
Yeah.
And then, how are we establishing the communication? This is where you have to understand something called system routes. We will talk about this on day 4, but because the question has arisen, let me answer that. System routes are the routes which are handled by Microsoft. You can't create, you can't delete. So what does Microsoft say? Hey, I allow all communication by default, provided your security is in place. What do you mean by security in place? We know that for the VNets, we protect it with Azure Firewall. So I just need to make sure that I allow the traffic here. We know that our subnets are protected by NSGs. So I just need to configure that. As long as you have made sure that your route at the firewall NSG allows the traffic, Microsoft doesn't worry. Okay, you don't have to worry about networking because of system routes. But you might say, hey Habib, I want my own customized route. This is where we have something called UDR, user defined routes, which are like custom routes in your environment. That can be done. Okay, so by default, simply put, a resource from one resource group in one region, can it talk to other resource in other resource group in another region? Yes, definitely, provided your firewalls and NSGs are configured accordingly.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Welcome. So that was our day 1. Thanks for those thumbs ups. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to step away for a quick minute to grab some water. Today I'm in my office. So once we have it, we're going to start with our day 2 whiteboarding. Okay. So before we go back, let me give you 2 questions so that by the time I'm back, you have these answers. I already answered this yesterday partially. So what are the types of storage? I partially answered this yesterday. This is my first question. And then how data is categorized. Think about these 2 questions. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. Let me just grab some water. And then we will get started. Okay, what are the types of storage? Yesterday, if you remember, I did talk about something called block. I just gave you a hint. What are the other types? You think about it. You know the answers. Just drop me the answers in the chat box and how data is categorized. Once we know this, it becomes really, really easy for us to understand the application requirements and design the storage. Okay, you will see me in 2 minutes. Let me just grab something before I start coughing. Okay, thank you, folks. see some answers floating in already. Okay, I hope that you're able to see the screen. What's going on here? Okay, I see the response from Vijay, block storage, file storage, and what is the other one? Third one, there are three types, right? Isn't blob also referred as container storage? Almost there, almost there. Come on, people, and why is that every time I ask a question, I only see the two Vijay's responding? I want Astro, Babita, Jacqueline, everybody to also respond. Okay, don't feel shy. This is your room. This is your space to learn and fail. Okay, don't feel shy about that. Yep, you're right. And as you can see on screen, what you see here is a basic definition of what storage is. Yep, tables and queues are also a type of storage because we do keep data. This is where data categorization comes into play, Roshan. You're right. We will talk about that. So now if you see the screen, what you see is a basic definition for storage. What is storage? A simple answer is place where I keep my data. Example, your iPhone. For your iPhone, the storage is capable of storing your photos, storing your calendar details, storing your contacts, storing your videos, right? All of that. For an enterprise, what can be a data? So this is where we said for an enterprise, it can be files, it can be images, it can be videos, it can be disks, it can be messages, it can be tables, which is where Roshan's answer come into play, right? So what are the types of storage? Now that I understand what data is, where do I keep it? That's where the types come into play. So we have block, we have file, we have object. Block is where you will hear terms like direct attached storage, DAS, or SAN. What is direct attached storage? Something which is local. Something which comes with the server. For example, if I go to my browser here and search for DL380 generation 10. So DL380 is a very famous series of servers from HP, Hewlett Packard. That's my first company, so I always like those series of servers. Now if you click on images, you will see it's a 2U rack server, right? And then the server comes with integrated hard disks. So that's why the term local comes into play. See here, this is how the server would look like. Basically, you would place it flat and then store it in a rack. Okay, the starting price of this server is about 5,000 USD. And you have about how many hard drives? 6 hard drives. Some models, they come with 8 hard drives, right? And each hard drive can go up to 1 terabyte if I'm not wrong. Okay, so this is what we have. So disks are known as local storage. In other terms, they're also known as direct attached storage. What happens if those 8 disks are full? Then we can attach another JBOD to the box, just a bunch of disks, no controller on it. We call it as MSA in HP terms, right? That's again a local storage. So in simple terms, anything that comes with the server is local, direct attached storage, right? Then what is SAN? Remote storage. Why should I go with remote storage? Can somebody tell me that? Why are we going with SAN when we have DAS already? So I said DAS is local storage, SAN is remote storage. Why are we going with remote storage when I have local storage already? Shade, that's a very good. Centralized management, thanks Vijay, thanks Roshan. And what is the most important reason? Shade is one, centralized is two, but what is the most important reason? So if you go back here to the server diagram, and if you check out the rear side, you will see power supplies in the rear. See here, this is your rear box, and these are your power supplies, the corner ones. So no single vendor can promise you that two power supplies can't fail at the same time. It has happened before. Okay? Can attach additional storage anytime. Yeah, makes sense, which means it gives you more room for scalability. I agree. Now, the most important reason for me is availability, which means if those two power supplies go down, what happens? The complete storage goes down. The server goes down. Redundancy, exactly. Backup, yeah, it does make sense. We go with backups as well. Okay, so DAS is not highly encouraged to keep your data, because if that server goes down, it brings your data down. We don't want that. So what we want is a data that can be always be available, a data that can be shared. That's what the diagram shows you here. See here? If server 1 and server 2 are in rack 1, and if there is a storage array called ST1, ST means storage, in rack 2. If server 1 fails, no problem, server 2 can still access storage array and then access the data of server 1. So which is where the term sharing came into play from your chat box. So when it is a remote storage, I have to rely on excuse me. When it's a remote storage, I have to rely on medium with which I can connect to the storage. This is where iSCSI, which is a normal RJ45 cable, FC, which is your fiber cable, FCOE, which is a coaxial cable. So the type of cable automatically changes. And depending upon the type of cable that you're using, the speed would vary, right? FC is the fastest, followed by FCOE, and then your iSCSI. iSCSI is the cheapest. So depending upon the factors like speed, cost, availability, you would decide which one to go with. So block storage is what you would generally see in any cluster solutions. For example, if I'm talking about MSCS cluster, you need a quorum disk, right? For quorum, it's always been a block. Then we can do file. What is file storage? This is where the term NAS, network attached storage, comes into play. This is more like your folder sharing, right? You have a machine with a Linux or Unix operating system. You create folders, and then now you're sharing that folder. People can keep their data within this folders. So this is where from Windows platform we have SMB. For Linux platform we have NFS protocols coming into picture. Object storage, depending upon the vendor, the object storage solution would vary. VMware offers something called vSAN and Vivo. AWS offers S3. Microsoft offers flops. So this is where I'm going to pause for about 20 seconds. Check out the screen. Let me know if you have any questions. So what you see on screen is a basic definition for storage. Different types of storage. Nothing Azure X. Without knowing the basics, you can't really design anything. So we are going to spend some time on the basics first today, then we will go forward. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following this so far. All good? Exactly, Roshan. Definitely. I mean, even your SAN. Okay, if I go back to the browser, that's a very good question. So if I go back to my browser and if I search with the keyword Clavion, this is a SAN, a storage array, a very famous array. Most of the enterprises would have used it in the past or would have been using it now as well, right? If you remember, somebody said scale growth, so growing is easy. So you would have multiple power supplies here. But let's say the whole box goes down. Don't worry, you will have a strategy of replicating the data, right? This is where the storage redundancy comes into play. You will have some strategy, whether it is backups or disaster recovery. So both options will be configured for you, okay? Without that, there is no go. So the main primary reason why we don't go with local storage is because local storage has more dependency on the server controller itself. I don't want that. I can't share it with others. If I want to do that, a sign is a must. This is where the concept of zoning and masking comes into play. Give me a thumbs up if that answers your query. All good, Roshan? So coming back. Yep. So the next question which I asked was, how do you categorize data? So whenever we talk about data, data can be any information. Okay, a Word document can be my data, a notepad can be my data, right? So how am I going to categorize this? So this is where the terms like structure, unstructured, and semi-structure comes into play. What do you mean by structured data? Anything that can be fit into rows and columns, also known as quantitative data, closed-ended questions, which we answer. In other words, organized data is what we call it as structured data. Example for organized data solution is your RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Example of that is Microsoft SQL or Azure SQL. That's your structured data. Unstructured data, on the other hand, is where the term qualitative comes into picture, which is more open-ended, which is categorized based on properties or attributes or labels, which is why they call it as schemaless. So this is where the term NoSQL comes into picture. A simple example of this kind of data can be videos, can be audio, can be mobile activity. For example, the watch I'm wearing today, right? It's a Huawei watch, which tracks my health information. So it's basically collecting these details, right? And then it's going to send to Huawei back. They analyze it and then they give all this information in their app on a fancy dashboard saying that how good I'm doing, how am I burning my calories and all that. Another good example of unstructured data can be your self-driving cars. So when we are talking about self-driving cars, they have multiple sensors around it. And these sensors are collecting different types of information, right? Different types of data. So I have to collect it. I can't fit this data into rows and columns because day one data is not as same as day two data, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. So this is where we go with the term unstructured. But these days, if I talk about images as unstructured data, if I talk about my iPhone, now when I take a photo on my iPhone today's time, it gives me more information. Information like the place where I've taken this photo, as long as the GPS is enabled, and then it gives me details about, it automatically recognizes the faces. It has some kind of metadata associated to it. So that's where the term semi-structured comes into play. So semi-structured data is where we align some kind of structure to the unstructured data through the help of metadata. So if you see here, a quick example. This particular screenshot talks about a quick differences between structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. And then here you can see a quick example of how these different types of data can come into play. For example, if I'm talking about e-commerce website, in Southeast Asia, we can think of Shopee or Lazada. In India, we can think of Flipkart. Now, if you look into this e-commerce data, there is structured data, there is semi-structured data, and there is unstructured data. Tell me how. Anything related to your inventory, anything related to your sales information, anything related to your customers. For example, if I want to log into Flipkart and then place an order, I must have an account created. So when I'm creating an account, they have my username, they have my password, they have my address information, and now you can also store your credit card information for faster checkouts. So all this data can be fit into rows and columns. That's why I've written it under structure. Example, Microsoft SQL. Unstructured data, any uploads that a customer do or any upload that a seller does associated with videos, audios, or images, which are basically objects. That's where I can bring in Microsoft Blob storage solution. Semi-structured data, example product catalog. Any information about your products that can I store in a database like CosmoDB. So that's your semi-structured. I'm going to pause here for a quick 30 seconds. Check out the screen. On the right hand side, you would see the difference between structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. On the left hand side, you are seeing an example of how you would deal with it. Also, let me pose this question. What kind of data do you deal with day in, day out? If you're going to be a cloud architect, which means you're going to deal with your customers' applications, which means you're going to deal with your customer, which is your client's data. So what kind of data do you think that you're going to experience? structure, semi-structured, or unstructured? Share your answers, guys. So if you say I'm going to work on databases, definitely structured data. All. See, Vijay says all. Makes sense, right? Because we're not limited to one. Think about Microsoft as a company, right? So we have all these three type of databases. I know structured is the best, but believe me, most of the cloud native applications these days go with unstructured data. Think about a simple example that I can think of is Graph, right? So it has both structured and unstructured data. Structured data, user profile. Unstructured data, orders that I place, right? Anything and everything related to that. IoT, yeah, think of IoT. IoT is unstructured. It can't be structured. Think about a simple example. A survey that you're conducting. A survey generally has standard questions. During election time back in India, you would run through this survey, right? Hey, how many people are living in this house? How many people earn? What is their salary, right? Now, if I go to a school and ask this question to students, there is no salary, there is no job, which means I can't fit. Those boxes would be open, and which means I'm consuming space, but I'm not adding any data to it. So to kind of override that, that's where we said, hey, not everything can be fit into rows and columns. Let's go with the file model. Key value pair. That's where your NoSQL data has picked up the pace. So whether it is Cosmo DB, Mongo, or Gremlin, or NoSQL. So all these are different flavors of it. We will touch base on few of these APIs today while we are talking about data. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. As usual, at 10:30 we will take our first break, and then at 12 we will go for our lunch. Okay, what we have here now is a quick introduction to AZ-305's content. The reason why I have brought this up is just to give a quick heads up on what Azure is offering to you in terms of data and storage solutions, and then we will talk about the design factors. Okay, I'm going to spend about 25 minutes on this. It's going to be like a quick recap, but we are not going to go deeper in any of this because this is not the right class to do that. Okay. So let's get started. What is Azure Storage? It's a Microsoft Cloud Storage Solution offering. What services does it offer? It offers all of this. It offers blobs, it offers files, it offers queues, it offers tables, and it offers disks. So these are the different solutions which it is offering. What are blobs? Object storage solution, which can massively scale. What are files? These are something like your file shares on-premise. Same thing, but it's in the cloud. What are queues? Messaging store. So when I have an application which has, let's say, front end and back end. Front end, let's say it's lazada.com. Back end is your database where you need to update the details about the orders, right? During the time of sale, there are so many people who hit the front end. Thousands of people place orders, right? Is my database as fast as my front end? Is it processing all that information as fast as it can? What if it is not? So this is where we need some kind of caching layer for the orders that are coming in before they are getting processed. So that caching layer is where your queues come into play. So queues allow some kind of backlog of work to be processed. So that's what it does. Then we have tables. Tables are NoSQL data storage solution offering, which means it's basically a NoSQL solution to store your information in tables. Disks are block storage volumes. Why should I go with it? When I have companies like EMC, NetApp, Fujitsu, Hitachi, 3PAR from HP. So why should I go with Azure? For me, these are the reasons. Number one reason is security. Hey, by default, any data that I add is encrypted. What more you need? Hey, how is it going to encrypt? You have the option. You can choose your own keys or you can use Microsoft provided keys to encrypt your data, which means anything that you add, data at rest is covered. Data in transit, again, can be done from your application front. Scalability, which means in physical environments, like in your typical on-premise data center, if you want to grow, you have to buy, you have to invest time, you have to invest man hours, right? You don't have to worry about all of that. If you want to grow your size, you can go into simple GBs to petabytes within few seconds. Scalability is massive. Managed. Azure Storage is a platform as a service offering, which means you don't really have to manage anything associated with your physical infrastructure. It is highly durable and highly available. What does this mean? By default, any data that you add to Azure, we're going to maintain 3 copies of it. So at any given point of time, these 3 copies would give you high availability at a data center level failure. Hey Habib, what if a complete data center goes down? I haven't heard news like this where the complete data center goes down because of a disaster. But even in such situations, we can maintain 6 copies of your data. But you have to little pay more. That's understandable, right? And then final reason is accessibility. I can access this data from anywhere. For example, if you go back to the cloud, where is my cloud? I've been sharing data with you all, right? So home, storage accounts, container, 51673. And then yesterday I shared this whiteboard with you, right? So let me just copy the link. Now from yesterday we saw there were people from India, there were people from Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines. No matter which part of the world you were accessing this particular link and you were downloading the file that I'm sharing. So if you see here, https:// what I'm doing is I'm securely sharing my data with you all, which means accessibility is global. So let's dissect this link to understand more. Okay, https:// is just a protocol with which I'm securely accessing your data file. What is that MHH0302? So that's your storage account name. Which means if you want to consume the data services offering from Azure, step 1 is you must create a storage account. Okay? Dot. What is that blob? The service that you're consuming. What if, rather than using a container, I have shared that file using a file share? I mean, I could have done that as well. So if you go back to file shares here, there is a file share, test 104 file share. Okay, I'm just gonna upload something to this. I'm gonna upload the same file. So let's try that. So here, day 1 file. I'll just say upload. Okay, the following item already exists. I think there should be one from the earlier days. So browse. Day 1 there is one file. So if I copy paste this file onto the notepad, what you see is the service name changing. See here, MHS0302 is your storage account name. Rather than blob, it says file. What is file? File is basically the service that you're consuming. Earlier I was using object storage, now I'm using a file share. So like this, it will change blob, file, table, or a queue. So these are the different terms that you would see. .co, .windows, .net would remain same unless you're working for a government agency in US or you're from China. Okay? If you're not from China, if you're not working for US government, this would be your domain name default. So .co, .windows, .net / for sharing files in blob storage, you must create a container. So the term 51673, if you go back here, storage accounts, MHH, containers, click on 51673. So here clearly says 51673 is a container. That's what I've highlighted on the screen. So it's a container name. / container, and within this container / the file or the object that you are sharing. So this is what we have. So it's the same thing. So till here it's going to be same for your file. .co, .windows, .net / is the file share name / the file name. This is what we have. Just take the next 10 seconds, understand the details that I've just posted in the chat box, and let me know if you have any questions. There's a question I think from Vijay here. Is there a protection against antivirus available in Azure? Example, for any file running in Azure blob, I need to scan for virus. Yep, you can do that. This is where your Defender for Cloud comes into play, right? So, and then also we have protection from bot attacks through something called DDoS protection. So it completely depends on what you need. So wherever we don't have a solution, Microsoft offers a connector with which you can integrate a third-party solution. For example, let's say, hey, I'm using CyberArk, which is a security solution in my on-premise for my workloads, right? Can I bring that up into Azure? Yep, you can do that. Clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. So now let's go back to the whiteboard. So all these are the services, these are the reasons. How do I access all the services? This is where I'm going to pick up my pace because like I said, this is all AZ-104, not 305. The reason why I'm running through this is you need to understand the terminology before you can design it. How do I access all the services? Step 1, you create a storage account. That's what I've shown you. And then service URL, storageaccount.blob.co.windows.net, file.co.windows.net, table.co.windows.net. When you want to create a storage account, what do? You go back to the portal, go to home, storage accounts, just say create. I'm not going to create one, but I just wanted to show you a drop-down menu. See here, the moment I say create storage account, the first question is the subscription, the second question is the resource group, the third question is the name. I'll just say test SA234, which means test storage account 234. It says, what level of account do you want? Standard or premium? So here are two options. That's exactly what I have in the whiteboard. Standard is best for most of the scenarios, but premium is needed for any application which is like an OLTP or an application where latency is of utmost priority, right? You need single-digit millisecond latency factors. Go with premium. Most of the times, the thumb rule which people follow on field is anything production, premium. Anything test or development, standard. Then here is a quick introduction to what is blob storage. Blobs are object storage solution. What do you mean by an object? An object can be a video file, audio file, image. An object can be a text document. An object can be anything, right? Most of the time, you would see this to store some kind of data which can be used for backup and restoration purposes as well. Accessible through REST APIs, PowerShell, Azure CLI, and multiple client libraries. Blobs are also the backbone for Azure Data Lake Storage Solution, which is primarily used for big data analytics, where you bring in systems like HDFS, Hadoop Distributed File System. So how do I get started? Step 1 is to create a storage account. Step 2 is to create a container. Step 3 is to upload your files, which acts like your objects. How do I access them? https://storageaccount.blob.co.windows.net / the container name / the object. Before I go into the types of blobs, I'm just going to pause here for 20 seconds. Try to digest this information and let me know if you have any questions. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. All good? Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, Vijay. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thank you, everyone. Let's get going. So now that we understand what blobs are, when will I use blobs? Now let's understand the types of blobs. So whenever we talk about types of blobs, there are something called blob, append blob, page blob. Where will I see this, Abhi? So again, let me just show it to you quickly. When you go back here to an existing storage account, open our existing container. Just for an example's sake, excuse me, let's say you're uploading something. Overwrite this. When you click advanced, see here, blob type. And from the drop down, you see blob, page blob, append blob. This is what we are talking. So which one should I use when is the question. Hey, if you're looking out for an object which needs optimized read-write operations, go with page blobs. All your virtual hard disks in your Azure virtual machine are page blobs. A single blob can go up to maximum of 8 terabyte. When do I go with append blob? Any append operations, which means if you're a developer and if you're writing a code which needs to log something whenever there is a change, append, right? That's where append blobs come into play. A single append blob can grow up to 200 GB. Blob on the other side can be anything. It can be text or binary data. You can store maximum of 190 terabyte. Most of the time, we use blobs by default. So if you go back to the document, if I haven't selected anything, blob is the default option. Everybody good so far? So these are the different types of blobs. Depending upon your requirement, you would choose which one you want to go with. Okay? So that was your blobs. Similar to this, we have something called Azure file shares. What are file shares? I'm sure at least once in your lifetime you would have created a folder and you would have shared that folder with your friend. Nowadays everything is online, but back in those days when movies of ours scarce, one of our friends would download the movies using torrents, and then he would then create a folder, and then he would share that folder with all of us, and we would just use to connect to that folder over the network and then download the movies which we need, right? This is what we do, Windows folder sharing. And then all you have to do is go to the security, add my email address, and then define what permissions will I have. So why am I talking about that? Because file shares are something similar. File shares are fully managed file shares which are accessible from anywhere. You can use SMB or NFS protocol. SMB for Windows, Linux or Mac, NFS primarily for Linux and Mac. For Linux and Mac, you can auto mount these file shares through something called CRFS util package. How do I do that? Let me just quickly show it to you. So you go back here, storage accounts, MHS0302, file shares, and then click on a file share, existing file share, and then just say connect. So when you say connect, it would give you a script that you can execute on your machine to get connected. See here, show script. This is the script, PowerShell script, which I need to run on a Windows machine in order to connect. Just make sure port number 445 is open. So this is what we do. For Linux, we have it. For Mac, we have it. So this is how we would connect to your environment. All of this we do practically in an AZ-104 class. Okay. Why would I use a file share? Same thing. If I have multiple teams, multiple development teams, and they need to share tools, right? I can place all those tools in a file share. If I'm talking about infrastructure guys who are creating virtual machines day in, day out, they need ISO images. I can keep those ISO images on a file share. If I'm moving an application from an on-premise environment to the cloud, I can go with lift and shift scenarios. I can use file shares, right? It can be a replacement or it can be a supplement to your on-premise file share solutions. Benefits, fully managed, can be scripted, can give shared access. Simple. So this is what we have. And what you see on the left-hand side is in a typical on-premise file share, you would do something called no root squash, which means anybody who's trying to access with a root privilege, do not squash it, allow it. So we do the same thing here. So storage account, file share, file name, and you decide who gets access to it. So this is your Azure file share. Table storage is a NoSQL offering, which goes with key value pairs, which allows you to store data in files rather than tables, right? Rather than rows and columns, right? It supports cluster index, can be queried with OData, LINQ, .NET libraries, capable of storing your structured data to serve web pages, could be a simple example. How do I get started? Create a storage account, create a table, go create your entity. Table is nothing but collection of properties or entities. Entity can be something like a username, address, or email ID. So that's what I've written here. Now, I would say Azure Table Storage is the old school boy. The new kid in the block is Azure Cosmos Database. So this table here gives you a quick introduction to why one should go with Cosmos Database. Again, if you're not a developer, if you're not going to deal with this, understandable, but good to know information. If you go back to yesterday's definition, if you want to become an architect, level 200 knowledge in all these aspects is a must. One of the primary reasons why I see Azure Cosmos database picking up the pace is the latency factors. It offers single-digit millisecond latency, global distribution, throughput, which is like more than 10 million operations per table. So all these are the extra benefits that you get compared to your Azure table storage. In simple terms, show me the money, get the offers. Yeah, so that's about your table storage. Again, all these are available to you only if you create a storage account. See here, once the storage account is created, you can go here, containers, file shares, queues, tables. Everything is available to you on the data storage solution, which are basically the data services which it has to offer. And then we have managed disks. What are managed disks? External hard drives for your virtual machines, block level storage volumes. This can be used for your application data. All you have to do is just specify the size and the type of the disk. Yesterday, while creating the virtual machine, if you remember, we selected the option standard SSD, but we have premium, we have ultra, right? So depending upon your latency factor requirements, you would choose one. Just tell me the type, tell me the size, everything else is managed by Microsoft. That's why it's known as managed disk. What else? They support multiple availability zones, can be integrated with Azure Backup, easy integration with availability sets. You can have as many as 50,000 disks of this type in a given subscription per region. I know this pace is a little bit faster than yesterday, but believe me, we haven't started anything about designing the storage yet. We are just talking about the basics. Designing becomes easy when your basics are strong. Now, this is where your design aspect comes into play. Let me look at the time. It's 10:29. So we will pause here, take a 15 minutes break. Once we are back, we will talk about this. Okay, for your reference, I will put all this data in the chat box so that you can refer to this. I'm sure if you have worked on Azure storage, you're aware of the redundancy options. This is very important factor even for your design. Right, so I'm just going to post it there in the chat box. Just have a look, enjoy this 15 minutes break, have your coffees, fresh up your brain, and we come back and then we train it again. So where is my timer? So we go virtual break. Break. Let's scan the QR code, be back in 15. We will continue where we have stopped from.